Hello everybody, my name is Jeremy Little. I am the host of this Telstra Live event coming to you live from Studio T. Today we're going to talk about how to enhance your customer experience. And I have two fantastic guests that I'm about to introduce for you. But everyone is watching at home from your office on a laptop or a tablet, I imagine. So we've got a live interactive platform for you. There are speaker bios, you can move the windows around, and you can have a look at a bunch of great information in there. So get in there and get interactive, and we really want to hear from you today. So please ask us questions, and we're going to have a look at the questions, and I'll ask the questions to our guests so that you can hear their opinion of what you're thinking about of the content. Now, enhancing your customer experience, as I mentioned, is the topic, and the two lovely guests that we're joined with today is Isabella Villani and Gavin Castle. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Jeremy.
You're most welcome. I'm sure everyone's really looking forward to hearing from you. Now, we're going to go to an audience polling question, and I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves because you're far better subject matter experts than I am. So there's a polling question up there for everybody that's watching in. We'd love to hear from you. So go in there and select one of those answers, and then we'll have a chat about it in a second. And while you guys are doing that, Gavin, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yep, thanks, Jeremy. As you said, my name's Gavin Castle. I'm new to Telstra. I've been here for 4 months. I'm the National GM for Sales in our Contact Solutions group. I've had 30 years experience across Asia and actually globally for the last 8 years. In the IT and telecommunications markets, and I'm really excited about the opportunity that presents within Telstra moving forward.
Fantastic. And Bella?
My name's Isabella. I run a company called Exceed Global. We specialise in customer experience with clients across all industry sectors.
Fantastic. So two very good subject matter experts for everybody here today. Now, the answer to the poll, overwhelmingly we have agents only based within the call centres. What do you guys think about that?
I would expect that would be pretty typical because we'll talk about the walls and the collapse of the contact centre walls, but at the moment, generally speaking, we still have a lot of organisations that have a typical contact centre that you would see where we have people coming to the same workplace every day to do their job.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree, and I think as our first topic when we get into it about breaking down the walls of the contact centre alludes to, you're probably right, a lot of our customers are looking to have more diversified workforces and what technologies they can utilise that are on offer today to give you that opportunity, but it's probably a good indication of where the market sits as it stands today.
Very interesting result. Thanks everybody for letting us know. There's going to be a couple more polls, so make sure you stay on. We want to hear from you, and make sure you send us lots of questions as well. But let's jump into the content from our experts. So we're going to be talking about breaking down the walls of the contact centre. Bella, please.
Yep. So what I think we'll see in the future is that the walls of the contact centre will collapse for various reasons, one being the introduction of cloud-based technology and the flexibility that the technology is now providing us. Also tapping into a remote working type environmental setup, and also we're all talking about digital disruption, and that'll have its impact on the contact centre walls. So what I see happening within organisations is the call centre won't typically be a call centre. We'll see that contact centre technology will filter into other areas of organisations, and they won't necessarily perceive themselves as a contact centre per se. So, for example, I met with a client the other day, and she'd mentioned in our area we have call recording and we speak to customers every day and we're using multiple channels. And I made reference to, and in your call centre, what are the challenges or contact centre? And she said, no, we've got a contact centre. My area focuses on customer service, but collections also uses the same technology. So people aren't really thinking of themselves as contact centre management or contact centre operations anymore.
Yeah, and I think further to what Bella has said around, the breaking down of the wall, and we've used some different terminology here. We've used call centre, contact centre, and when you think about what a call centre once was, it was exactly that. It was a place where you could ring an organisation and deal with, and they would hopefully deal with the inquiry, and it became a contact centre it was named that when there was another means to contact them, and that the first one that came in was via fax, and then it perhaps progressed into email. And now, and we will cover further through the presentation, there's a multitude of ways in which our customers are contacting our organisations. And you know, one of the things in the discussion that we've had with multiple of our customers is how do we make our workforce more diversified. You know, we can use, and I'm sure there's people, as you alluded to at the start, using computers, tablets, phones, whatever to watch the content. So how do we perhaps have a remote worker at home? Or more importantly, in an ageing workforce, how do we have retained the knowledge that, you know, we've had 30, 35, 40 years of someone within an industry, they hit a retirement age, they may, you know, just through where they are, they retire. Are they ready to retire, or would they be open to, you know, 3, 4, 5 hours of work from their home, perhaps not necessarily working in the traditional environment of taking a phone call, but more from, say, within a web inquiry and providing technical support, or, you know, if it's in a health market and you've got retired nurses, my mother as an example, to work and to be able to assist with people who ring in an inquiry, but in a web type format rather than actually in that traditional contact centre. So it's about knowledge. It's a challenge for our customers, knowledge retention in an ageing workforce, and how we can, you know, leverage that term, as I used before, that networked expert. And then we talk cloud. You know, it's interesting, cloud. You've traditionally had that on-prem or on-premise type environment where you could see it, you could kick it if it didn't work, the lights weren't on, you know, that type of thing. And then it, you know, morphed into a hosted, which is essentially just a lift and shift of that kit into a environment that's hosted by someone else, and into cloud. And cloud, I think, you know, we're in discussion with a lot of our customers have been waiting for a architectural platform that they can remove the responsibility of having to buy licenses and having to, you know, forward guess what they're going to do as an organisation so that they're right sizing for peaks and troughs within their market. Cloud gives you that ability to be able to change rapidly, to scale up, scale down, pay as you go. It also addresses things like geography challenges and really assists in that remote worker situation.
I am seeing a lot more companies talking to us about remote working strategies. So several reasons. One is accessing talent or accessing more skilled staff. The other thing is around efficiencies and cost savings. So for example, you know, I was speaking to an organisation the other day and they need to have a certain number of branch staff for risk and security purposes, but not enough foot traffic to warrant the staffing levels. So they're talking to us about hub and spoke models and actually getting them to do other channels, not just, you know, customers that are walking through their door. So I see a real diversification of the workforce. So, and also in regard to the walls of the contact centre collapsing, organisations are far more savvy. If you think about contact centre technology and the amount of reporting and analytics the platform offers and flexibility, I feel that I'm seeing it more in other areas of the organisations in regards to workflow management and also reporting and capability around, okay, if I've got someone leveraging that technology, I can see actually how many hours a day they are productive. They've got all the technology they need to do their job more efficiently, a lot faster, better, smarter, accessing the same system, so you really get that single customer view. So yeah, goodbye contact centre, hello big organisations.
Yeah, and that's why that call contact centre, and I sort of now call it the customer service hub, if you like, because there is so many ways to contact, to Bella's point. You know, but we are in an age of data, and we are going to cover this as well, but we have so much at our disposal. In fact, a lot of organisations have so much data, they aren't aware of what they actually have and the secrets that are held within and what that can untap for their organisation. And we're going to discuss that. You know, it's the buzzword out there at the moment is big data, but it is around how to leverage the data that we have and to provide that overarching seamless customer experience as we move forward.
Yeah, I have customers talking to me about big data and I'm like, you're not even using your small data well, so how about you get that right before you start talking to us about big data.
It's such a buzzword, it's starting to lose meaning, isn't it?
Exactly.
What is big or small data? And if you're embracing new technology in an organisation, just getting a handle of the technology is important before you're trying to get a handle of the data.
Exactly. The data is there, it's just about tapping into it, integrating it, using it for insights.
Yeah, and I think one of the other challenges as well when you do break down the walls is, as I said, you know, traditionally you had voice agents, and now there's a real need to have multi-skilled So, do you have someone who's just a voice agent, or can they move into to do web chat, or can they do email, or are they becoming an outbound agent, and how all of that hangs together in a world. And that is back to the cloud, that is one of the things that cloud technologies has done. Traditionally, you'd have to have a license for everything, whereas now with cloud technologies, depending on your spend level, you can have a blended approach. One day you might have 100 inbound and 30 outbound. The next day you might have, 50, 40 and 40, if my maths is correct, but that's a web chat, in there, depending on your peaks and troughs and your demand, and as technologies change. So we're seeing different behaviours and even different interactions with our customers. Traditionally it was in IT, far more business application driven now. Marketing officers, digital officers, those types of people within the organisations are becoming the key people who are driving the outcomes from their own brand awareness and brand recognition within their organisation. So it's becoming far more a critical business application.
It's interesting. One of the trends that I see in business, I work with a lot of smaller businesses, is that the customer expectation around connection with a brand is becoming far more human, and there's much more of a need for immediacy of contact. So you see like live web chat coming up a lot, which is, again, technology breaking down the walls. Is that what you guys are seeing?
Definitely, for sure. I think our customers are impatient. They want the information now at their fingertips. There's a few trends I see within customers, and that is, I want to be able to find the information on myself in the channel of my choice. If I can't find it and I want more information, I want to be able to speak to someone or chat to someone or interact with a human being, but in the channel of my choice when it suits me. So that's creating quite a lot of complexity with organisations on how you manage that. And in regards to chat, as much as I love chat, it doesn't give the cost savings that people are thinking it does. It's another channel to manage. I haven't seen it drop interactions within, say, calls into a contact centre. Usually chats are far more complex. They involve a longer duration. So there's those complexities, and unfortunately I'm seeing a lot of companies struggle with that channel. I'm a big advocate of, if you've got a channel, you've got to manage it, and just because someone can talk on the phone to your staff or your customers doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make an awesome chat agent. So it's a channel that needs to be managed. You need to hire people accordingly, remunerate them accordingly, and train them with the right skills, and also give them the support they need with really good, say, knowledge management material, really consistent customer experience with predetermined canned responses, and really clear business rules around how you'll manage that channel, and also how that channel will then integrate into the other channels.
Very interesting. Is there anything else you guys want to cover on breaking down the walls?
No, I think
not, because it's really going to lead into the other topics that we've designed and talked through. There's a flow. I think Bella hit the nail on the head. There's so much technology available and so many means with now we have the contact. You said yourself, we're all impatient. We're in a consumer world. We walk around with phones that's got 50, 60, 70 apps on it, constantly updating. But we are all about here and now, and we've all had the experience where you get that app that doesn't work, or that bad experience, and you're like, you know what, you'll delete it and you'll go and find the equivalent and you'll give that a go. And that's the challenge organisations are facing. We are becoming a far more knowledgeable consumer because there's so much information. I call it Dr. Google. But you can find so much information off the internet, and then there's so many means, the here and the now, that we as consumers will connect with and deal with. The difference between a consumer and that retail arm is that we'll put up with an app that crashes. We don't mind that. But in a business world, and they are playing that little bit of catch up, because it needs to be industrialised for the market, because you can't have a business application sort of crash or need to be updated 3 times a week and fix the bugs. So we're becoming far more impatient because of what's out there in our own domain in the consumer world, at our homes and the things that are available. And of course businesses are feeling the impact of that, because we're expecting the same of the organisations that we transact with in our daily life.
So we've got a question for the audience that we have right here. So everyone online, jump on and answer this polling question. How does your organisation manage different channels to market? Whilst you guys are answering that, I've got a question for our guests, Gavin and Isabella. How do you find the difference in managing customer experience or customer contact between B2B businesses and B2C businesses as far as channels and strategies?
I think that with B2B and B2C, you need to really understand who your customers are, what are their motivations, and why are they contacting you, or why would they need to. I think there's some generic strategic objectives that you want to achieve, and that's being really proactive with them. So trying to get on the front foot and work out why they'd be calling you, where are they at in their life cycle or life stage, and help them, and also understand them and what they need as a business organiser, a business or a consumer. What I feel with consumers though is just generic things like hours of operation. Unless you're dealing with small businesses who need that more after hours mentality, it's about actually making sure that you have enough people available to match the demands of when they're actually contacting you, and also understanding their level of urgency. So for example, you know, you'll find that if you don't respond to an email within 4 hours or 8 hours of a business day, whether they're a business customer or a consumer customer, they're going to be harassing you via another channel. They're going to be annoyed about it as well. So you'll find that the handling time will increase despite the channel, because they're going to vent first and then they're going to talk to you. And then that doesn't make them maybe sticky because they feel that you've neglected them or forgotten them. So whether you're dealing with a business customer or a consumer customer, they are still human beings and expect that level of interaction. The challenges with businesses as well, and it depends on the size, the sector, there's so many different factors, we could talk about it for hours, but it's actually understanding that particular sector, what they're trying to achieve, and communicating with them, to them, in a style, manner, approach that suits them.
Yeah, I think Bella's hit the nail on the head. The only thing I'd add is that, again, in the world we live in with social media, is that you've got to try and stop the venting customer. And the reality is, if they vent, it'll be venting. Once upon a time you might ring your friend and it's a voice call. Now you don't. You get on Facebook, or you tweet it, or you do whatever, and suddenly it's not one person, it's 10,000 people. And from an organisation's perspective, that has a serious knock-on effect. And if I can just use a quick example, I was in a previous organisation I worked for, but Sir Alan Sugar, who was the apprentice in the UK, he had an issue with his mother's phone. It was actually a phone, and it was with BT, and he tweeted how much he hated BT and the service that was provided because of his mother's phone. Within 15 minutes, he had the global CEO of BT call Sir Alan Sugar, and that was quarantined for a start, because Sir Alan Sugar has millions of followers. So you can imagine what that may have done to a brand. It was quarantined. So when you talk about what we're going into here with social media, you need to be able to deal with those sorts of things that might happen as an organisation. And then the tweet was retracted with Sir Alan Sugar saying how much he loves BT. But to Bella's point, when people vent today, they vent via social media, and it goes out to a cast of thousands, literally. So it's really important.
And you've got to be fast.
Yeah.
Tweets or anything on social media, statistically it's proven they get most of their attention, within the first few minutes. But basically, if you don't do anything within the first 2 hours, and I actually think it's less, but, if you don't do anything within the first 2 hours, it's too late. So when I have clients say to me, oh yeah, we've introduced social media and our chat teams work between 9 and 5, forget about it, switch it off. If it's not a smart way to manage that channel. So you've got to be fast. And they go, oh, and if it's very bad, we delete posts. You do not delete a post. You need to manage it well. Manage it within the channel. Try to pull it out of the channel. But deleting posts isn't a way of managing any sort of feedback you get via social media. Yeah. It's a channel that needs to be managed with its own rules.
I think it's sort of understand how it pulls into other areas within the business. And people talk social media, and do you have a strategy? And generally you do, and you need to cover those forums, but you also need to think about it from the security or the risk side of the business. In the event that something happens, how do you deal with it? What do you do? You can't just delete it because it's out there, but there is ways to quarantine it and then deal with it, and then release it back into your environment. So it's not as simple as just going, we'll open ourselves up to Facebook or Twitter or whatever it may be.
What I'm seeing with omni-channel as well, and I think about all the channels, is there is a cost associated with being omni-channel, because there really is that 24/7 dependence or expectation if you've got something within your channels that you need to manage that. And I find that that's a real struggle for organisations with concepts like remote working strategies, where you can have people at home working, or following the sun, because you've got cloud-based technology where you can have people, on either sides of the country or in other places of the world, so you can cost-effectively manage customer interactions despite the channel. I think that that's something that we'll see a lot more of in the future. And with omni-channel, it's also the integration of the channels as well. So, for example, it's really, really hard to cross or upsell in chat, and I think it's even harder to retain a customer. But it's how can you then go, well, it's it's easier maybe if we've got a complex transaction and we've been chatting for maybe 45 minutes. I spoke to one of my clients yesterday. He booked a holiday on chat because he wanted to try chat. 45 minutes. Now, I'm sure that it would have been a lot faster to give the 4 family members information, date of birth via a phone call. So it's actually been smart, and maybe saying to a customer, your inquiry is a little bit more complex, or we could get through this a lot more quickly if I called you. But that means that that particular agent needs to have phone skills. They need to be able to have the ability to pick up the phone and ring, or make an inbound or outbound call. So you can't assume that. I've seen all of these disparate systems when, our chat channels, our chat staff to answer a phone call or to do phone work physically need to swap desks because that station's only set up to manage this particular channel. That's a real complexity that I think is being addressed and will continue to be addressed as time progresses and technology improves.
Yeah, and we'll talk, because it is one of the key things, this whole omni-channel experience. And there's, at the moment, you'd say there's just a lot of disparate systems that are hanging together to deliver the experience. But from an end customer, and perhaps I've certainly experienced it recently, because I've been relocating from one state to another with the new role, and you'd be talking via chat and going through to then an agent talking to you, but the history of what you've spoken about, it's gone. It's gone off into the ether. So it was great, and I had to start again. And I've even had that recently with a power company where it was voice, it went from there to there, and the conversation and the notes weren't passed across. And that's critical around customer experience. In that particular case, it cost them a sale, in terms of me transacting with them. And I think that's the challenge that organisations face when we've spoken about omnichannel, and we've got content around it today, is how do you handle that experience and make it as seamless as possible? Because technology has been playing catch up, and perhaps the architectures haven't been there. They've been quite diverse, lots of them, difficult to manage, difficult to integrate, difficult to do lots of things with, and at the end of the day, not deliver the customer, who's all important to you and your brand, that seamless experience.
And I think customers too, they get to this element of, like, for example, you should know who I am because I've called on my mobile, and you should have my mobile number, and you should then be able to look me up and know that I've chatted with you about this particular issue, or I've walked into your outlet or your branch. So they have an expectation now, because some organisations are doing it, that you should know exactly why I'm calling you. You should be telling me. You're probably calling me because, I've done a home loan quote over the phone, over the internet, and I've got a question about it, and you can see that I'm logged into a session. So there's kind of a customer expectation now that not only should you know me, you should know what I'm doing with your organisation and, where I'm at with my life stage. So they are a little bit more demanding, and then they're starting to get let down, and you'll start seeing that in their net promoter scores around, if you're not investing in the right staff training and the right customer experience, you'll see that, net promoter scores go down, and you'll start churning customers and struggle to acquire new customers because they're not sticky anymore. They'll shop around and they'll want the best experience for them.
Yeah, and we, like Bella said, we're utilising with one of our customers at the moment, working through that, our mobile. We're very mobile people, and the mobile, as I said, it's got the little thing that tells you where you are, your GPS, but to be able to use, so if they're in a store and they're hovering around a section within a store, that it maps them to know that that's where they are, and they may have been into a store 5 times. So they're there, and it's recorded on the app. Then they go on the website, and they're hovering around a particular area of the website here, and they're looking and going through. And when they actually make A chat session, or B, make a call through, the agent, be it whatever channel, knows where they've been. Hello, Jeremy, we've noticed that you've been in our Chatswood store for the last 3 weeks. You've gone there 5 times. You've been looking on our website over here, and you as a customer would be like, wow, that's not making it creepy that we're stalking you, but to be able to offer that level of customer service. And we're working with another customer around little things that when you ring in, they know who you support, let's say in the football or what sport or whatever, and have that information that is scripted, and there's technologies that do that at hand, so that when you ring in, they can say, oh, it was fantastic on Sunday night that the Aussies won the Wallabies won the rugby, because they know you're a rugby union guy, So that type of thing, and trying to personalise that customer experience is critical in the ever-going and probably more difficult fight for customer retention.
And further
So
to,
I'm going to jump in quickly. The next thing we're going to talk about is about consumers going digital. But I want to summarise 2 points that I heard there that I think are really interesting. One is the expectation that customers have based on the level of data that some organisations are very good at collecting, and the fact that there's a bar that's being set around what good customer experience really is. I think that's really interesting. But the point you made before, both of you, about the amplification of the reaction to customer experience through social media is very interesting. Like, customer experience is the difference between a brand advocate massively amplified or brand damage massively amplified. So one of the questions that came in from the audience is around, so what do you do? Like, how do you manage that? Do you just go no social? Do you go no chat? Do you go multi-channel or not? Like, what do you do?
Okay, so we've done recently a digital review of a really large organisation, and the head of the department said, oh my God, it's so bad. Do I just switch it off and start again? And I said, no, you're going to be left behind. So no, what you need to do is have a really, really, really clear digital strategy. Be very clear about, these are our digital channels. This is what we're going to offer in these channels. This is our measures of success. This is how we're going to handle customers in these channels if we're not equipped to handle it within that channel. It's not ideal, but this is when we talk about seamless or omni-channel experience. So I just think you need to have a very realistic, what is the capability, not just technology, but also people. What can we expect from our people? What training do they need? Making sure that they're also set up for success, and you've actually thought about the best skill set required to handle that particular channel, whether it is email or whether it is chat, and how you're going to use the technology. So, for example, Gavin mentioned earlier about, being on site and on a site and looking. Well, are you going to enable technology like co-browsing? Okay, let me see, let me help you. Or when the chat does come through, knowing exactly where they are, or even be proactive and look at proactive chat. So I just think it's just a very, rather than it just falling into your lap and going, okay, we've got these channels, let's throw more phone agents or email agents on chat. And typically it's email because, they can write. But actually having that, but having really good channel strategy, staff training, recruitment, a very, very good coaching plan and mentoring plan for chat, so you can develop those skills. Having tools available like knowledge management and canned responses so they can handle them really efficiently, and giving some thought. So, for example, how many simultaneous chat sessions, Bella, should we be doing? Okay, well, can they see your CRM system easily, or do they have to log in and log out? So if they are doing that, well, you can't probably have 6 complex chat channel interactions going on when they've got to log in and out of your CRM. So you've got to be realistic around what you can and can't do. And also what I'm seeing in regards to digital is digital's kind of taking the low-hanging fruit, the really simplex inquiries. People are self-serving via an IVR or via their mobile app or however. But what I'm saying is that's just meaning that when they are contacting human beings, their average handle time or contact time, for example, is higher or longer because it's actually more complex. So therefore you need really expert or trained people to handle inquiries when they are contacting human beings, because the digital disruption has also included, the reduction of simple or easy transactions via the channel. So there are so all of these factors just need to be very well considered, and also you can't improve what you can't measure. So you need to have that data, even if it's not big, but that data and insights, and actually think about continuous improvement and innovation.
Yeah, and I think, just the thing with anything as we move into technology is to probably go into it with eyes wide open, not eyes wide shut, and to make sure that you address all facets of the business. So it's great at the front end, and you need to do that and be progressive so you're not left behind. But there's elements to, that you need to address in the back end. And I guess that's why we exist. We have the expertise, obviously, in-house and internally to facilitate those types of conversations so that you don't, when something goes wrong, if and when it does, you've got the steps in place to be able to deal with it, rather than, as Bella said, we're just going to turn it off because it's created, because you will be left behind. So it is progressive, but you've got to cover off, all elements. It's similar to the security in today's world about, reality is we'll all get hacked.
Exactly.
It's what you do when the event occurs. That's probably more important than the actual feature itself.
Yeah. And the other thing I think about digital and the disruption and omni-channel, and I'm going to say it, I don't see email being around much longer. Like, we can see fax dissolving into this nowhere
Please,
space.
It's a time waster.
Those who can measure email know how hard it is, and I generally have a rule with clients: if there are more than 2 interactions, email ping pong, get it out of the channel because it's too complex. If you're writing more, and there are clients that have business rules of no more than 7 or 8 lines in a response, because if it is sort of going back and forth, I don't think it's a really good customer experience. And I think email is a really expensive channel to manage, and also it's not immediate. So often, email is the poorer cousin in our contact centre because chat's immediate and the phone's immediate. So you find that, if an SLA is going to drop, it's going to be email, but it just means they're going to be leveraged. Customers are going to be switching channels, not by choice, but because of the situation that presents itself. So I see a reduction in email and an increase in chat as we increase in security, as we can possibly do a chat interaction where you can embed an attachment into a chat, and also when a chat's sort of integrated into a CRM, so you can store a chat like you can store a phone call or an email. So I see a real change, and I think it'll be bye-bye email because it's just an expensive channel and it's just not immediate enough for customers today.
We would definitely be on trend with the immediacy, right? The
Yep,
expectation
exactly.
that people have. They want an answer immediately, not in 4 hours or 3 days' time.
And often, because the thing with email, as you said, like, you may send it, you walk away, you do whatever, and you've got a response, but it might be 4 or 6 hours, or it's one of the 380 unread responses.
Yep.
And then suddenly you go, they never came back to me. You don't go trolling through. You might have a quick search, you haven't hit the right button, and before you know it, you start to vent via some other means. Whereas chat is that interactive. It's there, you're on the hook, and it's straight away here and now, and they will stay and do their interaction until such point that it becomes a voice call or they transact.
Yeah.
So before we move to the next polling question,
Yep.
anything else on digital and omni-channel and that content there?
No, I just think it's an exciting space. Like, there's so many new technologies out there, and we're seeing just a different, like, our world's changing, and I think that consumers are changing. Our decisions within organisations are really customer or consumer led now, and I think it's really, really exciting. But you can't drop the ball or become really complacent. You've always got to be looking at what's next, and the companies that I see that are up there are constantly thinking or trying to think 2-3 steps ahead of their customers and trying to stay on top of the game.
And I think, just wrapping it up on this area would be the challenge around the seamless experience, because we've spoken about lots of different channels and ways we can contact, and how we make that, they all merge and integrate into one, and to the back, to the customer, they don't see that. Because most customers today, well, I'm, from myself, like, generally if I'm doing that type of thing and I get involved in a chat, or then I want someone to call me, it's because I want to transact. I'm not there for information. I've done the digging, I've done my Dr. Google, and I've done everything I can there, and then I settle on one and I go forward. And if it's a seamless experience, generally with myself, I'll transact. If it's not, I'll say thank you, delete, 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 and go to number 2.
If we keep it really simple, customers want a better life. Like, they want to be sold to if you're going to improve their life, or if they've got a problem, they want you to help them. So if we try and be really positive about our perspective around customers and customer contact, I think that's important. If a customer's complaining, that's just, in my mind, an area of opportunity for improvement, and you should be grateful that your customers are spending that time giving you such specific feedback so you can fix where it's broken within your organisation.
And that's key. The feedback, customers are ringing in, and with no disrespect to organisations, they're probably generally now more in tune or in sync with your organisation's products than the staff in the contact centre are, and it's because they've researched. So they're becoming far more educated, and that's no disrespect to anyone, it's just that by nature of we all research, and then when they come in it's far more complex, but they're actually feeding such critical information back into your organisation. It's then what you do with that to then to be able to lever moving forward.
And they're not just comparing you to your competitors, they're comparing you to every single interaction they have via any channel, so they're really up the ante.
So the polling question that's on now is how many channels, and so everybody that's listening in, please tell us how many channels, and we'll get to that in a second. And whilst our audience are answering that question, I'm going to go to a question from James. Thank you very much for this one. James asks, can you provide some examples of best practice of organisations that are doing both contact centre and chat engagement?
Yeah, do you want me?
Yeah, you can pick
okay.
that.
No worries. I think where I can see, if we break it really simple and sort of these are the pillars of our company, and that is, you know, what is your customer experience? So what is your strategy? How are you going to measure success, and what is success going to look like? So that's one sort of aspect. So once that's set, then the next thing is the people. What people do we need to actually support the strategy, and what support do we need to offer? So I see customers thinking about everything from recruitment, training, coaching, succession management, performance management, those areas. And then you look at the process. Do you have a really clear understanding of what is the ideal customer experience? So, you know, we help customers around service design, customer journey mapping, process design or process flows. So having that really clear policy procedures that then feed back into training and coaching and knowledge management. And then finally, what tools do they need? So when I put tools, I include technology. What technology?
I thought you were mean calling me a tool.
No. No.
That's off camera.
Inside voice. No. What tools do they need to support that particular strategy? So, and that's where we talk about different technology and all the technologies that come into play. So I think that organisations that are doing well focus on that. They also have metrics around customer experience. So from a senior level, they understand the importance of customer experience and they live and breathe it, and you can see it filter down. So everyone in the organisation is remunerated or even managed around how good is our customer experience, and it's communicated from the top, and that's really encouraged.
So who's doing all that? Have you got? Can you name an example?
I can.
So
yeah, TELSTRA.
Yeah.
TELSTRA, it's actually...
Even if you don't say so yourself, because you work for them.
But no, I mean, yeah, no, we do. You know, we are measured seriously on our net promoter and our customer interactions. Everyone in the organisation is remunerated on it. I think one of the things that is key outside of just customer experience and in answer to the question is the environment then you provide your staff to work within. Because contact centres, I think Bella touched on it, you know, when they were a call centre, it was some floor and it was like, what do they do? And they all go in there and they just sit there.
And it was a place no one wanted to work.
Yeah, no one wanted to work.
You have to do your time, start there.
to go over there. So I think it's as much around the environment and the technology and the tools that you then give the people there to do their job to provide a fantastic customer experience. You know, I don't think anyone's absolutely nailed it, to be brutally honest. It's an evolving beast and it will ever evolve, but net promoter and customer service. Customer
effort, customer ease, net promoter, CSAT, they're all the things that I see. And the other thing is, when you say organisations doing it well, I think to an element there's an awareness level. Like, we always think about a continuum, so I've mentioned those pillars or those peers, and I think some of them are doing them well, say with strategy, they're still getting it right on how to implement it, or they've got the people right, but they're lacking in technology. So I see that there's different maturity levels within organisations, but where I see a difference is one, culture. So do your people love going to work? Do they actually really want to help their customers? And that is something like I walk into so many different organisations, you know, every day, every week in my job, and I can just tell by walking into a floor, a hum of that whole environment. And I find that those that are more customer centric have that hum rather than people hiding. And the other thing is that level of transparency as well, and that level of reporting, that they're very clear. And I know that there's, you know, an idea around wallboards or customer sat, but if you know this is my job in the organisation and this is how it's impacting our customers and this is the value I add, so making people really clear as to why they're coming to work every day. It's all about the people, whether it's a customer or your own staff.
I've seen a few companies do it well in the startup world, and the ones that do it really well that I've seen are the ones that take trouble customers and turn them into raving fans. And
Exactly.
and they are they're the companies that are capable of creating that kind of customer experience are the ones that have whole communities out there talking about their brand, doing word of mouth, social, everything, and they create these raving fans and brand advocates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think there needs to be an importance around feedback loop. What I'm seeing a lot in the market, and this is just even as a consumer or a customer, both business and consumer, is everyone wants my feedback. And I'm starting to think, well, one, you can paint my company for it, but everyone wants my feedback. And I'm like, well, are you actually going to do anything about it? Or is my feedback or my complaint going to disappear into a ether where I don't see continuous improvement? So what I see customers or consumers are wanting is we're not perfect and we don't get it right all the time, but this is what we're doing about changing it and fixing it. And also being a little bit more appreciative rather than just expecting feedback. Like, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your, you know, experience with our organisation? You know, well, okay, it's just a number. Why don't you ask me why I gave you that number? So if I gave you a really good score, how can you keep ensuring that everyone else gets that awesome experience? And if I haven't been that wowed by you, how could you have wowed me? And then what are you going to do about wowing me? So I think that customers are sort of almost being saturated by asking for feedback. So I now go, can't be bothered, delete, say on the phone, quickly hang up. You know, it's around, you know, we're going to have to use data and big data more smartly, because I think to myself, you should know how my experience is. Take a look at my chat, read my email, listen to my phone call. You have enough analytical experience to be able to, you should tell me where you think it fell over, you know, and let's talk about it that way. So I think that will shift as well in the future.
Yeah.
We can't just expect people to give us feedback. We should be more grateful.
And I think if anything, and it was a necessary, you know, it was like the flaw that everyone had, and it was the necessary type evil. But as we've moved forward and brand awareness and retention of customers is becoming increasingly difficult, this area here, is certainly if it's customer outwardly facing and you transact, it's the heartbeat of your organisation. And if anything, this area should be on steroids, because to provide that customer experience and moving forward, that's what organisations need to be thinking about. How it's all about the customer experience. It's how about they interact, we interact with them, and how personalised we can make it. That's probably the key. It's about, I suppose, to, you know, use a term called empathy with our customer is key. Gone are the days of just trying to sell them something for the sake of selling them something. It's now about listening to them, what they want, and hoping we've got something in our kit bag that fulfills their need or helps them on their journey. I think that's probably the biggest thing moving forward around, you know, customer service, more so than, you know, because it's key. I mean, you know, there's so many ways now to transact and so many people we can do it with. And as you mentioned, startups come in and they're dynamic and they provide that excellent service. And the larger they go, the more difficult it becomes to sustain that customer service journey. And
so just wrapping on that question, Jeremy, I always advise keep it really simple. Keep it simple in the respect of you want it repeatable and consistent. So you need to keep it easy to understand, to train staff, and especially at mass. I always say when you've got more than 20 or 30 people within your organisation or business unit, things don't happen via osmosis anymore. So you need to have that rigid structure. So I would be advising that person, keep it really, really simple, and also try to view everything you're trying to do from the customer's lens, and you won't go wrong.
And understand your own staff. You know, understand the people who are happy to be on a call and to be an outbound, and that you know that's their strength, versus the guy who might be fantastic or lady, you know, who's great, but probably so much more adept, say, in web chat or being able to give all of that information, but if you put them on the phone, they're probably not going to do that. That's not their thing. So, you know, it's key to understand your staff and make sure that they are in the right areas within your business or addressing the right channels that people can now come into your customer service hub.
I think just to reiterate something you said earlier as well, I think it's ironic that in the age of technology, it's still the human connection and the human
Without a
that are
doubt.
by far the most important thing.
Without a doubt.
All right,
We're humans, we're not quite robots just yet.
Just yet.
Exactly right. So still all about the customer. Technology just makes everything go faster. So the answer to the polling question was it was overwhelmingly 2 or 3 channels of the people on the.
That's pretty much standard. So 2 or 3 channels. Generally speaking, people, if you have them, will look when they're shopping at say 3 to 5 if they want to buy, and you'll find that people will use multiple channels. Ideally, you want them by choice, not because they've had such a bad experience in one they're switching. But yeah, that's quite standard.
So we've got about just over 10 minutes before we're going to get on to a final parting word from both of you. So let's talk quickly about dealing with the complexities of omni-channel environment.
Yeah. So in regards to the omni-channel environment, I think we've sort of covered that off, and that's around, you know, the interaction between channels, and if we are switching channels, to make it really easy for customers and allowing them to choose the channel in which they interact. So this whole omni-channel thing, there is technology, and whenever I speak to organisations, I have this debate, particularly with technologists or propeller heads within the organisations, no disrespect.
Called me a tool and now a propeller head.
It's all about...
I'm glad they're not coming at me.
But with the omni-channel, it shouldn't be our customer experience is led by the technology. It should be led by a strategy with a really clear objective and how the technology can support that. And the other key thing, and I sort of covered this off before when we discussed customer feedback, I find that within the channels everything is great, particularly if it's omni-channel, except when something goes wrong. You even see it like it's great with staff when they're scripted or they know what they're doing, but if something goes wrong, the organisations I see that do it really well is when they take ownership of a complaint and they almost case manage it. So when something goes wrong is when you really lead to that dissatisfaction and that real detractor type mentality. And you know, you talked about winning customers back. You win customers back then when you're really focused on getting it right, when you actually show some level of empathy. Now, you cannot teach agents on a phone or on a chat empathy. I think that's something that comes with culture and training. Like, we have done soft skills training before, but if it's not encouraged within an environment to go, I'm really, really sorry about that, I'm going to do everything in my power to fix it and take ownership, then bouncing them around an organisation and dealing with it really, really quickly. But I think that's one of the complexities with omnichannel.
Definitely, and we mentioned about it with the social media. It's like what happens, and it's how well an organisation deals with it will dictate how well to the customer. Like, things go wrong. It's just the fact of life. We touched on it. Yes, we don't ever want to take away that human element, but the moment you throw it in, things will go wrong. That's the reality of life. You know, so it's how well an organisation deals with that and gets back. And I think, you know, you actually hit or said a very strong word. It's ownership. You know, when there's a problem, make sure that your organisation, your staff are trained to be owners within that. Owners of that problem, and they see it through from the beginning through to the end and feedback, and that will provide, I think we all acknowledge, as I said, stuff goes wrong, but that will provide a great, you know, a fantastic customer experience. And from my, you know, and this has been the challenge with technologies, we've spoken a lot about, you know, this technology will do that web chat, this one will do that, this one will give you your routing engine for your calls, this one over here will do that, and we've 5, 6, 7 different, you know, technologies and how we integrate them, and it's sort of not seamless. And the market, as I said before, the commercial market hasn't been playing catch up, but it's trying to industrialise this freight train of things that are coming at us in the consumer world and getting it ready for market. You know, and back to cloud technologies, that's what that does do. You know, in cloud platforms, and we've just recently released one to market around that full seamless approach, all in one area. You know, it's not lots of different applications, it's all just one brand, and it's all integrated seamlessly in the back end. Because to me, that's the critical thing around the omni-channel, and that'll dictate your customer experiences, being able to have, as I said before, the web chat, goes to Jeremy because you're going to call me back. You call me and say, hello, Gavin. I see that you've been dealing with Bella around blah, 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 and you'd like to do blah. And I go, fantastic, versus, hi, Gavin, my name's Jeremy. You've been dealing with company ABC, and I'm calling you, and you go, hang on, where's my 35-minute web chat session? What happened to it? You know, or you've been passed in the organisation, even voice calls, and that conversation doesn't come over to the perhaps more senior agent or the person who's going to own the problem, and you have to start again. And I think we've all had that, where we've had to start again, and it just...
Just about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So annoying.
But
Yeah,
the other thing I'd add about complexity of omnichannel is around volume. So, for example, as an organisation like Telstra, they have millions of transactions via multiple channels, you know, a weekday, year, so they can afford to staff.
And they're all happy customers who pay their bills and tell
right.
their friends.
But, you know, they can afford to have chat teams that can handle peaks and troughs. But what I see are challenges for organisations is operationalising a channel and a strategy, because they may not have enough volumes to warrant enough staff to handle a inquiry via a channel. So, for example, with chat, if you're only getting 12 chats an hour, well, you can't have 5 people waiting for those 12 chats in case you have 20. So what I see challenges or complexities in omnichannel are for those not so massive, large organisations, because it does have an expense around having that channel and managing that channel, not only from a technology perspective, and I see the cost of technology dropping, so I think that's negligible now almost, but it's more around, you know, how you manage that. So, for example, having the skilled staff to manage a chat or even manage that channel, you might find that, you know, I always say that as a contact centre or a operational manager, you need to be far more skillful if you're managing, say, a 100-seat operation compared to a 1,400 seat, because in a 1,400 seat you'll have a whole workforce planning team, a whole L&D department, a whole analytics area. But when you're smaller, you've got less people and you don't have that luxury of having such a big support team. So I find that that's a real complexity I'm seeing, is for, you know, a person or people to be able to manage and operate this omni-channel environment that we've been creating.
And I think part of the thing that's perhaps slowly or slowed the uptake of is, as Bella said, it's that the multitude of, and then it becomes, well, from a budgeting sense in a lot of smaller organisations, you have to have a licence to do each one. So how many of each do you have? Web, outbound, inbound, whatever it might be, licenses. And through the advent of, you know, cloud type technologies, and I mentioned right back at the beginning, that's broken that barrier down. That's sort of gone. Now it's blend. You can deal and chop and change. You know, as you move, you can go with the market. You know, you need to understand where you're on a marketing campaign and how we're going to address that within our market. The strategy is this. Okay, that's what we're going to need to do within our own organisation. And we don't necessarily have to go and buy a whole lot of licenses to use for 2 weeks that we're going to then switch off and not use for another 12 months. That's technology has been an
enabler.
An enabler, but it's also inhibited organisations from doing it in the past.
So we're going to jump to a polling question with the audience. It's been up there, so hopefully you guys are already answering it, but it's, what is the attrition rate of staff within your contact centre? Whilst these guys watching in online, we're going to jump to another question from Eduardo. Thank you very much, Eduardo, for your question. So how do you turn a positive chat customer experience into a sales channel? Let's do it quickly because I want to jump into the last piece of content. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure that is a complexity. So it's a great question because a lot of companies are struggling, as I mentioned earlier, with upsell and cross-sell. But it's the same, I think, within any channel, is actually determining what is the customer's need, how is it going to add value to them, and actually position it from their perspective. The other thing around that is actually selling the benefits, and this is where it's important to have the right training or information, so staff are equipped in a few words. How can you say this is going to be really valuable for you, and how can this make a difference? So it's having the right training for your staff and also understanding the customer and trying to do that within that particular channel.
All right, so less than 15% is about 35% of the people, and 30 to 50% is 29% of the people. So pretty high attrition for a lot of the people watching in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Normal.
Yeah,
if you look at attrition rates within centres, It usually, you hear, and depends on what research paper, but around 40% in this particular environment, it's quite high. Companies who claim to have really lower attrition rates, I always think there's lies and statistics. So, for example, I worked with one company, we don't measure if they've been promoted internally or whatever, but I think there's a concept within organisations of positive and negative attrition, and yeah, attrition rates seem to be high. Several factors impact that, and that could be the sorts of people that you're trying to hire, the environment they're working in, the location has complexities, which then flips you to remote working to look at can you address attrition by having more flexible work conditions as well. So how the operation's constructed impacts that, but I'm not surprised by those stats. We've got a good representative sample in our audience. I'm impressed.
Yeah, and you look at, I look at it and go, technology as, like lots of different systems, lots of different screens, coupled with much more complex questions or inquiries or interactions from our consumer now because they're educated, and perhaps with the environment that they work in, sort of those three things coupled up, and with no disrespect, or no fault to their own, it's difficult. So the attrition rate becomes high.
It's tough sitting there chatting all day and speaking all day. And, we talk about omni-channel. One of the benefits is if they're skilled, because we all wish to have this hybrid agent or hybrid staff member who can chat and email and talk, but at least you can try and vary their role or vary their day by having blended interactions.
All right, so we're almost at the end.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the people, and then I'd love
all
for you
about
guys
the people.
each to leave. Could you leave our audience today with one key takeaway once you've had a chat about the people, please?
Yeah. Yep. I think it's all about the people. We've discussed the customer quite a fair bit, so I think that we need to think about our interactions or our experience in an organisation from their perspective, not the different silos and processes that need to happen internally, but flip it from a customer's perspective. But then it's also about the people and the staff. Like if you think about those attrition rates, your cost to hire, recruit, train, the amount of IP that walks out of the door, so it's, and I'm talked earlier about complexity. The money that walks out with it, but also those complexity of interactions. That comes with people understanding the business and being around a lot longer. So, having your staff, picking the right people and making sure you're hiring smart, giving them the right training, the right level of management support, that timely coaching, the right tools to support them doing their job, but also making them feel like they're part of the organisation and they understand, the bigger strategy. I speak to everyone within an organisation despite their level the same, and I have a very transparent, open style in how I run my company and how I see organisations work really, really well. So it's all about your people. You need to look after and nurture them, and think about change fatigue. So I bet you in those organisations where there's high attrition rates, they're not getting a lot of management support, they're frustrated for whatever reason, and also you're not giving them the tools or you're not empowering them to do their job really, really well. They're human beings as well, like they're not robots just yet. We talk about artificial intelligence and the impact it's going to have on the call centres. Well, at the moment, we've still got people, and they're your most important asset. They account for 3/4 of your operating budget of a centre. So that's a pretty big chunk of cash that you're spending on people. So those that are doing it well are really thinking about how they look after them.
Yeah,
Gavin, what's your
look, I agree. I think as long as there's people, let's be honest. But if you think about, where we live and we're all humans and we invent things, but at the end of the day, we're still humans. So we talk, we interact, we probably talk less. We were talking about it before, walking out of a lift with our heads in our phones, and do we automatically get out and we get out on the wrong floor? But as long as you have human interaction, then customer service moving forward becomes critical. And the reason, if you think about it, we don't know our customers. We don't know them all. So they're, to a degree, they're autonomous. Okay, but the autonomous customer today, if you think about it, is driving your brand more strongly than ever before. They drive your brand, and that can be great for your brand or it can be negative. And as Bella said, the people who work within your own organisation, so within our organisation, I look at it, and if I take myself as an example, and I'll join Telstra. Telstra didn't necessarily employ Gavin Castle, they employed a brand that I have. So I work for the organisation, and it's my brand, which is reflective of the organisation's brand you work for, and you don't have to be in like breaking down the walls, as we said, a call centre or a contact centre, it's customer service. So whether I walk in and I see the receptionist through to how the cleaner carries themselves through to whatever within your own organisation, is their brand reflective of the organisation's brand that you want to, you know, portray out to your consumer market. And that critical interaction, that to me is key above everything else. And I'll leave you with my takeaway, but it's that customer service. It's all about customer service. And we have, too often now, we've sold things that we just, for the sake of selling. And now we look at it and we go, you know what, we won't. I'll listen to you, and I hope I have something that I can assist you with your endeavours.
Fantastic.
That'd be my takeaway.
So we're going to have to wrap up on that. Gavin, Bella, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure everyone's loved it. Thank you everyone for joining. My name's Jeremy Little. I guess the takeaway is that your brand is about people and customer service is what creates the brand. So thank you so much for joining. Please stick around and answer the survey, and we'll see you on the next Telstra Live event. Bye.
Bye.